Episode 46 of Connecting the Dots with People I Don't Know or Do Know. This is somebody I do know, but I did not know he had so much stuff going on. He talks about the 3 areas of his life. He's excelling in all of them. We're going to find all about that. But the main reason I got him was because I wanted to talk to him about this Alpine mountain climbing stuff that he does. So let's go check that out. This is Addy. We met probably over a decade ago, Chamber of Commerce, and you're an accountant.
Yep, in about 2010 or 2011, I would have come on board as the treasurer of the Chamber of Commerce.
Quite fitting for an accountant.
Yep, that's
so
right.
They always get shoehorned into that role, don't they? Have you been a treasurer for any other organisations along the way?
That was my first, and then just subsequent ones were boards of directors for community organisations and that kind of thing, but not treasurer. For any kind of entities again.
So let's start with accounting. How did you get into accounting?
That's probably slightly an embarrassing story now, but back in grade 11, I think it was, I was running amok in my biology class in school, and I actually got kicked out of biology and needed to select another subject for the following year that was in the exact same spot in the timetable. And the only thing that was in the same spot as grade 12 biology was year 11 accounting. So I got jammed into year 11 accounting when I was in grade 12 and then sort of had a knack for it. And then, when the end of grade 12 rolled along and you had to apply for university or what you were going to do, I kind of just applied for the accounting at Sunshine Coast University.
Yep.
Back then you were allowed to put in six options for your course, and I just put the one in and thought, if I don't get into that, it's not meant to be, and I would go do something else. But
it was meant to be.
Got in and knocked it out of the park in terms of the undergraduate stuff and then the postgraduate stuff, and then opening up the business.
Yeah, awesome. Where did you go to school?
School was in Karoi,
okay,
Noosa District High School. And onto university at Sunshine Coast at Sippy Downs.
Right. So how did you end up in Caboolture then?
Yeah, so Caboolture was a bit of a halfway point between Brisbane and where I grew up in Noosa. I'd moved after finishing university and working in a firm up in Noosaville. I was kind of ready to take that next step and outgrown any of the firms that were on the coast, and at the time anyway, and moved down to Brisbane for work and just renting down there. But when myself and Robyn were ready to buy a house, we got priced out of the Brisbane market. It was like 2008, getting like just before GFC. So interest rates were high and property prices were high. So I couldn't afford in Brisbane, couldn't afford up on the Sunshine Coast. And Caboolture was that sort of midpoint that, we bought our first house there. So we were still able to commute into the city for work and get up the coast on the weekends.
Yeah, awesome. And tell us about your firm now.
Yeah, so Laszlo Grace.
Yep.
We're a Queensland member firm for Impact Global, which is a global alliance of accounting firms. It's a non-co-branded alliance, so where you've got your Pricewaterhouse and KPMG and Ernst & Young and those kind of things. Those firms are all co-branded alliances. Ours is not a co-branded alliance, so our alliance is Impact Global. And in every major city around the world, I think we've got about 165 cities and locations covered. We've got an Impact Global member firm. And that just helps us look after our clients who have either overseas distribution chains or other bigger businesses that are expanding into Australia, and specifically for me, into the Queensland market. Mm-hmm. So mining support services are really the major ones that we do the international tax advisory for through Impact Global. Just because that's if there's an overseas company expanding into Australia via Queensland, it's usually mining support.
Yep.
But other than that, we do wealth management and from an investment point of view, and also tax advisory and tax compliance. So if we're doing tax advisory for someone, making sure their business structuring is all done correctly and minimising their tax and protecting their assets, we roll on and do the tax returns and financial statements as well.
And typically your clients would be business owners?
Yeah.
As opposed to, employees, I guess?
Definitely. Business owners and also high net worth individuals. Okay. So if we do a lot of self-managed superannuation funds. So they're not exclusively for business owners. If someone's has been earning a lot of money and having a lot of superannuation contributions over the year, or sold assets and dropped money in to offset capital gains tax,
Yep.
they might fall into a category of a self-managed super fund. So we do that as well. But yeah, primarily, businesses and tax advisory.
Yeah, awesome. So you've been an accountant since when?
Started straight out of uni in 2004.
Okay. So over 20 years now.
Yeah.
What still gets you going in accounting? What excites you? What's your favorite bit?
Yeah, it's a bit different for where I am now. So what excites me now is different than what excited me earlier on. We can add a lot of value in a very small breadth of area. So with businesses, like there'll be accountants that have touch points on mergers and acquisitions or other minor parts of the business. But where accountants can have really major influence on the business is in things like the business structuring, like even going from when to use a company, when to use a trust. So if someone comes to us with a great idea that is going to be effectively patented or from a intellectual property IP point of view, then we want to make sure that we're looking forwards to what the value is going to be. And we'll say, okay, well, you want to wrap up that IP in a trust because that's the thing that's going to go up in value, and then license it to a company. And that's the thing that's going to save you tax in an operational context. So in that little example, we're both minimizing potential tax in the long term, minimizing operational tax, like tax on your normal net operational income in the short term, which allows them the cash flow to reinvest in the business and really get it from where they are now to where they want to be.
Yep.
So it's that type of stuff that I think is really beneficial.
Yeah, awesome.
And I touched on mergers and acquisitions before. That's probably something that we actually do end up having a bit more influence over, especially now we're seeing just we're over the hump of all those baby boomers that are starting to exit the industry, and anyone in that sort of age category are looking at their exit strategies properly.
Yep.
And starting to get a bit more of the management of those businesses doing exit strategies and the acquisitions or mergers in some cases that they're doing for that business to continue or become a part of another business. And that can be quite interesting with cash flow, because not everyone is doing mergers and acquisitions with cash.
Yep.
Or lent or borrowed money. Sometimes there's equity positions there. Sometimes there's vendor finance. There's a mix of all of that. And sitting down at like a board level with the two different businesses involved and making sure that it's a good outcome for everyone is interesting as well. But that's something that is growing at the moment for me and my firm anyway, rather than something I've done over the last 20 years.
Yeah, awesome. There's a lot of baby boomers out there that somewhere along the line built themselves some big businesses almost without any procedures in place, stuff like that. And I guess they're getting swallowed up because there's, at a raw level, some great businesses that even if they tinkered with some processes would be even better.
Yep. And that's the other part of it as well. You've just hit it on the head there. It's getting something ready for their exit strategy to actually be implemented in 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 years' time.
Yep. Now, if I went to your Instagram, I would see nothing about accounting.
No.
What would I see?
So my personal Instagram, my Laszlo Grace Instagram has no posts.
So I don't follow that one.
Yeah. So for the last several years, I've been getting involved in rock climbing, alpine climbing, high altitude mountaineering.
Yep.
And that kind of thing.
And it's not just rock climbing. I mean, I guess you start off somewhere like, what's an entry level into rock climbing, Kangaroo Points or something like that?
Yeah.
That's not the photos I see on your Instagram.
No.
What's the tallest mountain you've been on?
Tallest mountain that I've summited, it was just a mountaineering objective. So a non-technical, still on a glacier, but hiking up. It was called Mera Peak in Nepal. It was just a bit over 6,500 meters. So
give me some context.
You'll start to feel the effects of altitude and altitude sickness at about 4,000 or 4,500 meters.
Right.
Some people are less, some people are more. But about that. So we're another 2,000 meters on top of that. So it's full acclimatizing, staying at specific camps for a day or so.
Right.
And yeah, the actual climb is a full day going up the glacier to a high camp, and then what we call an Alpine start. So starting at 1 or 2 a.m. and doing the full, 10 or so hour slog up through the snow and on the glacier up to the summit.
So a lot of planning.
Yeah. Oh, in general, a lot of planning. That one for me was non-technical. So even though we're in boots and crampons and roping up, because we're on a glacier and there's the crevasse danger, there was no technical gear as in cams and devices that we're using for rock climbing and protection and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Belay devices and whatnot, which I can get into. But
so there's different types of so technical and non-technical?
Yeah, so that was the highest one that I've summited, but that was non-technical. From the top there, being in the Himalayas, you could see all of those bigger 8,000 meter mountains like Everest and Lhotse and Shaoyu and those kind of mountains. The biggest technical one that I've attempted, it was about 6,200 meters. It's called Kyajo Ri in Nepal. And that was proper ice tools out, ice climbing, ice screws, cams for protection and everything like that. We didn't actually summit though. I think we got probably 200 vertical meters from the top and had a bit of a whiteout.
Okay.
Yeah. And
is that where you it's pack, turn around, go home?
Yeah, we tried to bunker down for about an hour, but I was just getting too cold.
Yep.
Like I was in a down parka and everything, just shivering. And
what's the temperature and something like that?
I can't remember that exact day, but yeah, between -20, -25.
Right.
So yeah, definitely cold. But that was the highest technical mountain that we tried. And then other ones. So my mountaineering started at Mount Everest. I didn't summit, but it was one of these training climbs. So I went up to Camp 3. Yep. Which is 7,000 meters, which is a long way up, and yeah, definitely feeling the effects of altitude. But at the time, the permit costs were too much, and the time frame was too much to go any higher.
Yep. So, how many times have you hopped on a plane to fly to another country to climb a mountain now?
30 or 40. Yeah. Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. It's
so clearly a deep passion.
Yeah, and over the last couple of years, I've started the formal training in that as well. So from a guiding perspective, because I realised there was a gap in my knowledge and what I could achieve in Australia, because we've got a lot of rock climbing and really good rock climbers here, but from an alpine point of view, we've got no alpine environment. There's no ice, there's no big mountains, there's no altitude or anything like that. So there was a gap there. And there was also a gap in my ability to climb with other people, because what I'd found is in terms of the alpine realm, so 5,000 or 6,000 meters technical climbing with ice tools and mixed rock as well, I was more experienced than any of my immediate friends. So I couldn't drag them along. Also more experienced than anyone would climb with me, but not experienced enough for that next level of people who were capable of doing those sorts of things.
Yep.
So that gap there, the best way I could work out to bridge that was to do formal training. So in the guiding sense, there's an international body called IFMGA, which is the International Federation of Mountain Guide Associations, and they provide the best level of training in the world. I figured if I can get into that system, get trained by these IFMGA professionals, I would also be going through the programs with people at my same level.
Yep.
And then be able to climb and progress with people at around my same level or even more. And I am kind of happy because just after the last trip, I was in Colorado in February. I started to see the fruits of all of that over the last couple of years, because there was people who were in that area who I'd met and done courses with before, that we were able to go out and climb with them, and other professionals that are already fully qualified guides. I'm going out and climbing with them and being able to tag along on their own guiding company development days as like a trainee guide or assistant guide or something like that. So I am seeing the fruits of all of that
Yeah, wow.
now after a couple of years of doing it formally.
How did you get into this? Where do you how?
The best I can come up with is, so about 10 years ago, as a Father's Day present, I went over to America by myself. So Robyn looked after the kids who were young at the time, and I just planned to go over to all the different national parks and just do hiking, because I was not into climbing, I wasn't into anything else. I was just going to do a bunch of hiking to all these cool places. So Yosemite and Yellowstone and up into the Canadian Rockies. So I did all of that. And when I came back down out of Canada, I came through Washington State to a mountain range called the North Cascades. And it was May or June, but it was after a big winter. So there was lots of snow there. And I arrived at the car park in snow boots that I got from Aldi or Anaconda or something like that. So just the ones that you're supposed to go to like the ski village in and walk around town. So those, because I had no idea. So I rock up in my Aldi boots, and I had an idea on where I wanted to go, but I really didn't have an idea at all. And there was some backcountry skiers in the car park, and I asked, "Oh, can I tag along with you?" And they sort of looked me up and down and looked at those boots, and they're just like, "Oh no, I don't think you're really prepared," because they knew what we were getting into. And I'm like, "Oh no, it'll be all right. Like, and can I just follow along until it's unsafe?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay." And we started to go up. So they were skiing up in their skins and everything, and I was just sort of following them. And it got to the point where we went up the side of this mountain and got onto the ridgeline. And after the ridgeline, there was a glacier. And I know now that I shouldn't be up there by myself. Like, they're okay because they're on skis and they're not going to go through any crevasses. But I was following them up, and I got to about 100 meters from the top and over the back of the mountain, because it all got ridgeliney. Over the back, there was a crew of people who were on a course, like an Alpine skills course or something like that. And they were all decked out. They had the boots and crampons on. They were harnessed and roped together, had their mountaineering ice tools out for safety, helmets, everything. And they came over, and whoever the guide was, the trainer, he just looked at me and said, "What the hell are you doing up here?" Because by this stage, I'm in the sun. I'm in a T-shirt now because I've got my jumper wrapped around my waist. And he's seeing me. He's like, "What are you doing? Like, you're going to get yourself killed." And I'm like, "Oh, what do you mean?" He started talking about crevasses and everything, which I know now is super dangerous. So I turned around before getting to the top. But when I turned around, I looked out, and we were above everything else, like North Cascades for hundreds of kilometers, all these snow-capped mountains. It was a beautiful day. And yeah, it was awesome. And I sort of half slid back down into the tree line and back down to the cars. And by that stage, the guys who I was following up had skied up to the top and then down and around, and were back in the car, and basically went into the boot and grabbed a tinny of beer and threw it. And was like, "Oh, good job today," or whatever. And I cracked open a tinny and had it there in the car park with them. And I thought, this is the sport that I want to be in, or this is the type of adventures that I want to be in.
So dangerous?
Okay.
It's a dangerous sport?
Yeah.
And not just from obviously falling, but temperature? What are some of the dangers?
Yeah. So obviously the idea is to mitigate danger as much as possible. And the more I go through this, especially in a professional sense, because like I said, I'm getting these programs are IFMGA world-class programs that I'm going through for rock and Alpine and avalanche danger and all this sort of thing. Yeah, so the first thing is mitigating danger as much as we can. But there's always that subjective versus objective danger as well. But yeah, to answer your question.
Does that make it exciting? Is this what accountants do for their excitement?
Yeah.
I could die, but if I do these things to mitigate it.
Yeah, it's like risk mitigation.
It sounds like tax minimisation.
Yeah, I take risk. I mitigate risk at work, and I mitigate risk outside. But there's also that danger when you're on the mountain. So Avalanche is a huge thing. The cold weather isn't such a huge thing unless something else has gone wrong, and then you end up there overnight and you haven't been planning to end up there overnight, and you have to bivvy or whatever. Yeah, they look at the three falling dangers when you're actually climbing. Are you gonna fall off the mountain? Are you gonna fall into the mountain, as in go down a crevasse, or is the mountain going to fall on you? So rock fall and avalanche, and that kind of thing. So they're probably the biggest three dangers when you're at altitude. So in Nepal, and I've been to Pakistan as well, you've got altitude sickness and that kind of thing. I've been up to 7,000 meters in Nepal, and I think it must have been a bit over 5,000 meters in Pakistan. And just the experience helps with that, because you know not to push too high too fast.
Yep. And what is altitude sickness?
The symptoms are headaches and nausea and not wanting to eat and throwing up and just feeling crap, like the worst hangover type thing. But my understanding is that because the air's thinner up there, every time you're taking a breath, you're not getting as much oxygen.
Yep.
And so it's the lack of oxygen in your body, and your body just isn't able to operate.
So it's an oxygen thing, not that the body for some reason knows it's up high.
Yeah, and exactly right.
Okay.
But
otherwise we'd get it in a plane, wouldn't we?
Yeah, all the planes are pressurized.
True.
And I've heard some high altitude mountaineers, like after getting back from Everest, flying and going, oh, if this plane depressurized, I'd be okay. I wouldn't need the mask. But your body adapts to it, but it's slowly. So when you're adapting to the altitude, your body is physically developing more red blood cells per liter or per unit of blood. And also, like, your resting heart rate goes up, and to make sure that you can get the required level of oxygen through your body.
Yep.
It's doing these types of metabolic things, and it just takes your body a few days to do that.
I guess the question with danger was, does that play a factor into what drives you to do it? Or if not that, why do you climb the mountain?
Yeah.
Is it really for the view at the top?
No, I think it's pushing yourself.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's seeing what that limit is to what you can achieve.
Yep.
For me anyway, for other people it's different. I didn't get into it at an early age. Like, I'm not a super climber, I'm not a super athlete, but I can do a lot of things above average. And high altitude Alpine technical climbing is that.
Yep.
You got to be able to climb well on rock. You don't have to be world class. You got to be able to climb ice well. You don't have to be a world class ice climber. You got to be really, really fit to deal with that altitude side of things and be able to get up and get down and everything like that. So there's that fitness as well. And there's the non-physical parts of it. You got to have your life set up in a way that you can go away and your business is looked after and your family's looked after and your financial matters are all sorted while you're not there. You got to have the right teams in place. That's both from like your personal set of team, like your wife and network, and then your business team. So you got to have the right team back at the office to make sure that everything's getting handled. So there's a lot of things that come together to be able to do that. And I'm still not there, but I'm really excited to see where that limit is.
Yeah, awesome. You mentioned family. You're not the only adventure person in your family. Tell me about your family.
Yeah, so Robyn, as you know her, or you know her, she is an obstacle course athlete.
Mm-hmm.
So things like Spartan and Tough Mudder. And she's been doing that for about 10 years as well, a similar amount of time that I've been doing the mountain climbing. She goes really well. So the obstacles are things like rings and monkey bars and rope climbs, carrying buckets of heavy rocks, even things like she's traveled overseas to do events that they've had like a dam or water where they've sat in a fence just on top of that water surface. And you've got to go underneath it, but it's too far for one breath. So the only way to get your breath is to come up and breathe through the fence, and then you got to go back down underneath and then keep on going. And in the events that she's done that one in, It's been 24-hour events, so where you go around the same 8-kilometre loop with the 20 or 30 obstacles each time. So then doing that overnight and after fatigue and everything.
Yeah, wow.
But no, she's done really well. For 2 years in a row, she won the Australian 24-hour championships.
Yep.
And that qualified her for world championships. First time she unfortunately had a medical DNF. And then the second time, which was the end of 2023, she came sixth.
Yeah,
So,
wow.
yeah, sixth female in the world, covered about, I want to say, 140 kilometres of obstacle course racing.
That's,
Yeah.
And you guys were obviously together before you went down these paths of extreme sports.
Yeah.
What did you do before? How do you go from not doing these things that you both pick extreme sports?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I know for me, I was so focused on getting my postgraduate qualifications and then the further qualifications I needed to get a certificate of public practice to open an accounting firm myself and then start and grow the accounting firm. I was really focused on that. And then we had kids, and Robyn was, we were just battlers, really. Robyn was just jumping from the jobs or casual jobs that she could get until we did have Dylan. And then after we had both kids, that's when, so I went away on that hiking trip that I was talking about and really got the love for the mountains. And I think it was either when I got back or shortly after that, Robyn was worried about her weight after having kids. And I suggested to go to one of the ones in the park. There was, it was a Saturday morning.
Oh, the park run?
Oh, no, the park workouts.
Right, okay.
Yeah, people would just bring down kettlebells or something like that, and you'd be able to pay your $5 and do a workout with the group. And from there, she joined a gym and did an obstacle course race, and now she's into running.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Unbelievable. Before I hit record, you were talking about your buckets. Tell me about your buckets.
Yeah, so like I was saying, I talk to a psychologist every couple of weeks. We've got this standing discussion. I think it's really important. Just like you keep your body physically healthy, I need to keep my mind physically healthy, because I wouldn't be able to get through the quantity of workload that I do if I wasn't mentally healthy, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I've suffered from anxiety before previously, and I try to keep on top of that as well. But yeah, my buckets. So it's a fairly common analogy, I know, but in every area of your life, it requires a certain quantity of your time and effort and resources, but you've only got a certain limited number of time and effort and resources. So the analogy that I use with the psychologist is that he gives me the 3 buckets, which are family, business, and my own ventures, but only gives me 20 balls to put in the buckets, but each one to fill up requires 10 balls, right? So no matter what I do, I can't maximize my efforts at any one point in time across all of them. And it's really important for me to always come back to that, knowing that sometimes I'm in training mode. And I went over to Colorado, and that was every single day we were doing between 4 and 12 hours of outdoor training with professionals, with other people who were just climbing with recreationally. And in that's great. I can put 10 out of 10 in there, but I'm away from the family. So I'm not spending as much time with the kids and all that sort of thing. And I'm only dialing in remotely for work. So those other kind of areas are suffering or not having the maximum level of attention given to it. And then there's going to be other times, like during tax season for me, when there's a lot of things going on at work that I've got to throw 10 out of 10 effort in there. Yep. But it does mean that I might not be home for a couple of dinners a week. And it might mean that I'm not training and I'm missing a couple of training sessions. And just understanding that while you've got multiple priorities, you've got to allocate time and resources between those.
Yeah, awesome.
But like I said, it's not always at the front and center of my mind.
Yep.
And then that, when you're stressed out with not being able to do everything that you want to do, for me, it triggers anxiety. And I've just got to come back to, you know what, the reality is I'm trying to do 3 things, but I've only got enough time and
Yeah.
resources for 2 things.
I saw a quote years ago, and I've, danced with anxiety over the years as well. And you come across lots of quotes. And the one that resonated the most for me was, this is what you think you should be doing. This is what you're doing. And anxiety is the gap in the middle. And that one just seems to just live rent free in my head now.
Yeah.
What's on the horizon for you? What's in the future?
From a consulting point of view, it is all about increasing performance and output for people. And it's something that we do almost passively in a work sense at the moment, because we're so focused from a work sense of, here's your business, all right, and it's how do we increase revenue? How do we increase that gross margin? And then how do we decrease costs, like the discretionary costs that aren't going to affect the overall core business, and that's going to increase net profit. And it's all about these micro percentage increases that will add up to a lot, and then that exponentially over time, in 10 years' time, we'll be at a much better place if we can, do these things, increase gross profit percentage and revenue. But I want to expand or extrapolate that same quantitative and objective analysis into a greater range for someone's life and overall wealth and portfolio and time as well. So if you look at a percentage, right, it's say 10%. What does 10% growth in your business look like in this year and then in 10 years? And where are we going to be if we can grow 10% a year versus if we don't grow 10% a year? And also there's that inflationary context as well, or component, because if you do the same thing that you're doing, you're actually going backwards, both in the value of money as well as you're going to naturally lose customers over time. You're going to naturally have attrition, and naturally competitors will come up as well. So you've got to improve just to cover the inflationary component. And then there's these force multipliers as well. So in a business sense, it's you can increase revenue and keep the same, for example, 50% gross margin, and that will give you better net profit overall. But if you can increase your revenue by 10% and increase your margin by 1% from 50% to 51%, well, that extra 1% is dollar for dollar on that revenue increase. So it's a force multiplier. You're going to increase your profit by more than that.
Yeah, wow.
Because your margin increase as well as your revenue increase. And I want to be able to roll that out for people as a whole and go, hey, you might spend 40 hours at work, 5 hours in transit, 15 hours with your family, 10 hours doing your cooking and cleaning and yard work and all that sort of thing. You might end up with 70 hours a week. And saying to someone, we want to increase your output by 10% to make sure that you can get 10% more value out of all those different areas is hard, because finding 7 hours a week is hard, right? Next to impossible. So it's a case of, and I'll take half a step back. It's not just doing 7 more hours, as you know, it's got to be quality 7 more hours at least the same level that you're already doing with your output. So it's about finding efficiencies. So if you've got some kind of, if you can find efficiencies for 4 or 5 hours in that, and that's across all of those core areas of your life, then you might be able to find 4 or 5 hours of efficiency, which means you're only having to increase by 2 or 3 hours of output, and we're all of a sudden increasing our total output by 10%. If we're using force multipliers, and as an example is, if you've got your business humming correctly, then maybe you don't have to go into work 5 days a week, you only go into work 4 days a week, and then you're saving time on your transit. So there's these force multipliers as well. And if we can do that at the right level of output, we're going to be better off for it in a month, we're going to be better off for it in a year, and exponentially better for it year in, year out.
Yeah, awesome.
And I want to be able to roll that out for people.
Yeah, awesome.
Do it.
What about for the bucket of mountain climbing? What's on the... Is there a goal, a pinnacle goal a pinnacle mountain? Shouldn't use the word pinnacle when it comes to mountain climbing.
Yeah,
Is there a pinnacle?
there is. I've got a vision for what that looks like, which is far too advanced for me to be even thinking about at the moment. But it's high altitude, technical, big wall climbing in Pakistan,
Yeah, wow.
like over 7,000 meters. And the trip I did last year to Pakistan was reconnaissance for that.
Okay.
So firstly, working out the permit system, going up the valley. The top end of the valley was by myself because there was a day out of base camp. We set up a base camp. I went up to where the mountain actually starts. You know, it's feeling the rock and knowing how, like, if you're going to put a piece of gear in there, is that going to hold if you fall, or is it just going to crumble around your piece of gear? But yeah, there is a major goal there, but
Awesome.
I'm a long way off that, unfortunately.
Thank you very much for chatting with me today.
No worries at all.
What's your next trip?
Next trip, we're going over to Europe with the family.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So no mountains.
No mountains at all, although we're taking the kids skiing.
What's your next mountain trip?
Mountain trip, I do an Alpine guiding course in Boulder, Colorado
Okay.
in July.
Yeah, awesome.
So that's 8 days in July. It's just my next course in the progression there.
What's a cam?
A cam. Okay, so a cam is a removable protection device for rock climbing. So you squeeze it like a syringe and it comes in.
Yep.
And then when you let it go, it expands out. It's like a spring-loaded sort of thing, and it has aluminium lobes that come out. So as you're climbing, if you've got a crack in the rock,
Yep.
you can squeeze it and it'll tuck itself up, and you put it into the rock and let it go, and it'll come out and jam
Okay.
into that crack, and it'll have a carabiner on the end. So then that's all jammed into that crack, and you can clip your rope into it. So as you continue to climb, if you do have a fall, you're only going to fall down, and the rope will grip in onto that.
And they hold on?
Yeah, they're
Like
good.
you depend on them sometimes, I guess.
It's similar to an ice screw,
Okay.
where in that it's definitely strong enough to hold any kind of fall you can throw at it. What the variable is what you're putting it into. So if you're in crappy rock that's going to crumble, or like if you're in a crack that's flaring outwards or something like that, it'll pop out. And yeah, if the rock is crumbly rock, it'll just, there'll be too much pressure by the time you fall on it and you pull down on it, which is making those cams go outwards and compress against the rock. If that then blows the rock, then it's no good. But if the rock's good, it'll hold, like our body will break, like our back will break on a fall before that pulls out. And same in ice. So if you're putting your ice screw into good quality ice, there's a lot more that is very bad that's going to happen before it pulls out.
Yeah, wow.